All right, guys, welcome back. Look, I don't even have my mic set up properly. Well, welcome back to the Real One Garage podcast. I'm your host, Jamal, and this is the podcast where we keep it real about car culture and keep it relatable. This episode is going to be a quick one, as to be honest with you, I actually have to go to work shortly. And I also am experimenting with doing a live podcast on the channel. It's a new thing that I'm going to be trying. And nonetheless, things are going to be uploaded again on the channel for YouTube as well as on Spotify. So you'll be able to watch it in case anybody is not able to clue or tune in at this current time. So just want to let you know about that. So no guests today, unfortunately. I have some in the works, but gonna get back to you on that for the next episode or one coming in the future. But today is going to go down memory lane a bit. It's only going to be a short podcast, a brief overview. As I said, I got to go do the 9 to 5 so I can make some bread for the family and for the GTR. But the topic of today, S chassis. And I guess the title is going to be S chassis stories. Why the S chassis still runs the streets. So why S chassis are still relevant today? They're relevant today because drifting has actually now had such a big resurgence since I started in the car community as a car enthusiast. It was really booming in the early 2000s when I first bought my car in 2003. And I'm sure you could already guess that my car was an S chassis. I had a 1990 Nissan 240 SX. If any of you guys actually listened to the podcast during the COVID times, I actually did go in depth with a kind of background on how I got into car culture. But to give you guys a brief overview, I'll just go over it in more of like a snap image kind of thing of it. So I was a high school student from 2000 to 2004. So that'll be able to age me for you guys in case you were curious. And basically, I started getting into cars because my friend gave me a burnt disc with the first stage of Initial D placed on that burnt disc. I watched that. It enraptured me. I had already been into cars before then. My previous dream car when I was a kid was a Dodge Viper because, that was the jam for everyone back in the early 90s. But that particular series got me into Japanese car culture even more. I remember even walking to school and seeing a third gen Prelude that was done up. It was beautiful. I remember it was a red Prelude. And I even told myself I was going to get that. When I figured out how much it was going to be, and I used to go and look at the Auto Trader magazines and the little magazine stands or look online in the early days. But it was more magazine stands, actually. Man, really dating myself. Back then, I saw that the Prelude was about $16,000, and that could have been $1,000,000 for me at least. So I didn't even think I'd be able to get that. So especially when I was working at a grocery store as a grocery store clerk. So with that being said, I kind of limited my scope of what kind of car would be affordable. And then I started seeing the old Preludes. So I thought maybe I could get the old Prelude. And because the old Prelude actually had retractable lights, I think it was a 1980 model, another car popped up for through right next to the Prelude, which was the 240 SX, also known as the chassis RPS 13. So with that, I started taking a look more into that. And because of Initial D, I knew that I could put two and two together and see that the 240 SX was the North American version of the 140 SX. So lo and behold, that's what I wanted to get. And then I saved up my pennies very slowly. And with that being said, I was able to purchase a SX eventually. It was white as a 1990 complete base model, and it had no AC, had roll-up windows. It was truly just like a base car. I'm just going to show you a little picture here so you guys can get a image of it, especially you guys watching the YouTube video or the YouTube live. So this was the car. I think that should be sharing. Yeah, there we go. So this was the car. It had Momo wheels, which seemed to be a huge brand at the time. Now, this is after I actually got the car painted. Never forget, I got this paint job for like $800 through a friend of my dad's. And I felt like I was on top of the world. Retractable lights, I had the front lip on it. It was everything I could have dreamed for. I loved that car. Now, with you guys knowing S chassis, there's a number of S chassis. Actually, I think I actually may have a book here, Hyper Rev. Let's see here. I got two. Yeah, I got two here. So, the S chassis. So if you ever want a magazine to ever look at for cars, Hyper Rev is the way to go. So this is the S chassis, and can't say too much with the glare, but right there is a 180SX. I have two Hyper Rev magazines that show that. There's the 180 down there. The only difference is the 180s got the Type X model in Japan, whereas here, the equivalent, the 240SXs, stopped selling at, I believe, 1994. And that's when the S14 model was introduced. So, with that being said, I got that car, played around a little too much, eventually blew that engine. And then, because of I guess you could say, the influence of Initial D, I basically was completely enraptured by it. And I knew about the SR20, which is the motor that the SX comes with, and the S13 Silvia comes with in Japan. I also have another picture of that. So I basically looked for some importers at the time here in Canada and Toronto, and was able to track down an importer that had a whole bunch of half cuts of different S chassis cars. I sourced one down, and it was a 180SX half cut. And again, for you guys here on YouTube, in terms of the live, you'll be able to see here that that was my 180SX half cut with a moderately stock SR20 red top. The only thing that has that you can't see in that picture is it came with a HKS mushroom filter. Not the greatest thing to use, and I actually continued using that, which was so silly. Now that I know that those things are very dangerous when they dry up. So got that, threw in the SR20, enjoyed it to a massive extent. Then I eventually went a little further and got a Silvia front end for my car and swapped that. Now this is when the car got a little bit beat up, but you'd probably be more in line to call this a drift missile looking kind of car, as opposed to how clean it used to look when I initially got it painted. But you know what? One man's trash is another man's treasure. And so when I did get these triple projectors and the Silvia center grille and all that, it completed the quote unquote Sil 80 look for my car. So yeah, I kept that for a bit. I ended up selling that car for about $4,000 once I racked up enough debt, and I was just like, I want to get out of debt now. I've been spending too much on credit cards for this car. So I did that. I moved over to the next chassis. Again, it was probably an ill-advised purchase, at least that one that I bought, but then I moved over to an S14, and I kind of repeated the same process again with that car. Basically, bought the car, which was, unfortunately, it was a rebuilt car. And then I guess what you call it. Once that happened, pretty much blew the engine again, and then got another SR20, which in that case was, I'll show a picture of that. I sourced down an actual S14 Silvia half cut, and I put that in my car, my S14. Now that car was not the best chassis to be doing all this work to, but I did it anyways. I didn't do too much to it other than put a couple mods. But to be honest with you, back then I was so novice in terms of knowing what is the right thing to do with this car. I should have just driven that car stock until I could do things properly with the car. In any case, that being said, I've had some pretty good experience with the S chassis up until that point. So the S chassis, I guess I didn't actually explain. The S chassis encompass three models of cars: the Nissan Silvia S13, actually four models. Sorry, Nissan Silvia S13, the Nissan Silvia S14, the Nissan Silvia S15, and the 180SX and 240SX. So the differences between the Silvia and the 180SX basically is the Silvia has a more luxurious look to it because it has just the normal lights, not retractables. And I guess, you always want what you can't get. And here we liked to do the Silvia front end swap. So people would take their 240SXs, swap it with um, Silvia front ends, or even sometimes they would swap it with S15 Silvia front ends as well. Um, we had the S14s here; they were sold here as well. So both the Zenki, um, the 95 to 96 model here, and then we had the Koki, which was 97 to 98. In Japan, I believe it was 93 to about 95, maybe 96. Sorry, 96 for the Zenki, and then the Koki was, I think, 7 to just after 99. So yeah, we had those here. People would swap the front ends if they damaged any of the front ends. People really like the uniqueness here to have something different. A lot of the reasons why these cars became legends in JDM culture is because they were being used for drifting and street racing a lot of the times. They were an affordable car. They didn't cost much. Firstly, for me, I bought my 240SX for $1,700 Canadian. You couldn't find that price at all anywhere here. Not even for a shell. I bought a full vehicle drivable for that with about 123,000 kilometers on it. So it gained a lot of popularity because of Initial D. And then there was also the popularity in Japan because a lot of, I guess you could say, street racers and professional racing drivers, one particular being the Drift King, as everyone knows, Keiichi Tsuchiya, would make a DVD called Drift Bible, in which he would drive S13s, S14s, Hachirokus, so the Corolla here, but the AE86 Torino and Levin. These cars were very lightweight, had decent amount of power that you could enjoy and modify them based on the upsurge of the aftermarket scene in terms of and companies that were coming up: Blitz, HKS, Trust, Abbey Racing Company. The list goes on, to be honest with you. Abflug, Bomex. There were so many companies coming up with body kits, performance parts, wheels. The list goes on. Like, it was so much easier to access these things, and the prices weren't exorbitant because it was on the onset of things, especially with the golden era of Japanese cars happening in the late 80s to 90s. There were so many of these cars built, so many. I actually haven't looked up to how many models of each cars were built, but there were so many. Now, jump forward, you can barely find these cars now. You see a lot of S15s, I can say that. Now, if you're looking for a JDM car to import, or if you're in Japan to purchase, but the prices are almost what they were or more than what they were brand new, because we've kind of entered a classic car era for Japanese cars in the same way this happened for the Mustangs, the American muscle cars. We're entering our own version of the classic cars. The only thing I can say is the build quality for those cars comparatively is a lot different. The metal used and the interior used, mind you, for Japanese cars were a lot better comparatively to their US competitors for the time. But when you compare it to, let's say, older classic cars like an Eleanor, the Mustang from Gone in 60 Seconds, those cars just had a classic nostalgic build quality that can't really be beat, and they don't, I guess you could say, they don't have as many issues as, let's say, the Japanese cars of today. If you're really looking for a dash for a 180X or a Silvia, and because yours is cracked, it's mad hard to find it. It is insanely hard. But yeah, as I mentioned, I digress, the drifting was becoming a big thing. Now, back then they didn't have a D1 or anything like that to really like push drifting into its roots. But drifting did start. Drifting did start. It was starting from Japan, as this book that I have, Drifting, is from Japan to America. It did start. We were on the early onset of things with drifting, and I have to say that was probably one of the biggest influences for me with Initial D of why I tried to get more into motorsports with that car. But it's very hard, and you sacrifice a lot when you sacrifice your car, and even just potentially getting into accidents with that. Although back then parts were in abundance, you could go to a junkyard and find a TSX and just start taking off parts and probably pay next to nothing at a junkyard. Even the guys at the junkyard be like, why do you care about this car so much? It's a piece of junk. If they only could see into the future, see what it is now. But yeah, again, why they were so popular? They had really excellent balance. They were rear-wheel drive, so that's one of the essential drivetrains for a sports car. Lightweight and very simple. Again, as I said, the huge aftermarket support, Initial D, now Ghost as well. And they were comparable to even a little higher platforms in terms of like an RX-7 or a Supra. You can get basically the same drivetrain for way less the cost. As I said, with how I got into the S chassis was just pretty much Initial D. There is a euphoric feeling when you first modify your car, and especially when you do your first engine swap. And that was my first turbo car experience ever. Just hearing the turbo noises, hearing my exhaust. My mom helped me with putting a custom exhaust, which is like a no-name exhaust at first on my car. But I didn't care. I loved the sounds. I loved the feel, the torque that you feel from such a small turbo, a little T25 turbo. It's one of the smallest turbos ever. I didn't care. It for lack of sounding corny, it really revved my engine, and I did the general modifications you do to it, other than the engine swap, exhaust, air filter, putting on a blow-off valve, which is probably the silliest thing. I'll tell you this, I'll admit how novice and unaware of what I was doing with my car. Not only did I have a stock side mount on my car, which the stock side mount comes with a bypass valve, so I already had that on the car. I didn't even really think about it. I just wanted more noises because it sounded cool, and I just wanted to be like Fast and Furious or Initial D, hearing all the whoosh noises. I put on another blow-off valve. So I had technically I put on a blow-off valve and I had a bypass valve. So I had two valves on my car where it was barely making probably even stock horsepower, which just goes to show you, like, you were really uninformed back then unless you had somebody who was in the automotive industry to teach you or let you know, especially somebody knowledgeable of the Japanese cars. But you know what? This is where my friend Ted came into the play. He had his own S13, and he kept it with the stock KA24 at the time. He had the Silvia front end. He used to get parts from Japan, and I met him simply just through the forums. And that basically started a friendship that lasted until today. I'm just going to show you a picture of me and my friend Ted at one of the shops he was working at. At the time, he was working on one of his friend's R33 GTRs. This was a few years ago. But he basically helped me through everything. He actually helped me source that S13 Silvia front end. He helped me with any modifications I needed to do on my RPS 13 240SX or my S14 240SX. We did everything. Suspension. I helped him with his car. I remember being under his car, having a transmission on my chest because we were taking out an engine for his car. It was really awesome. I'm not gonna lie to you. And even just going to different meets. I remember going to drift meets and industrial areas. I never really got to go to any kind of tracks at the time with those two cars, but the meets were just great. Just to go to a coffee shop and hang out and talk about your car, or see somebody who has gone the extra mile with their cars. It just felt like everyone was relatable. Everyone was just trying to enjoy the hobby, the passion. And it wasn't so much of a competition. There was no gatekeeping. It was more of just showing how your car was an expression of yourself. Now, prices nowadays, not cheap anymore. It's insanely expensive. you can't find any clean examples of things unless you're willing to spend pretty much 25 to 30 grand or more for these cars. And then also here in Canada, I don't even think you can find a 240SX that doesn't have rust on it anymore. It's kind of sad. It hits me in the feels quite a bit, just because just knowing the time I was able to enjoy these cars has gone. Yeah, I do miss it. I get nostalgic, and I do feel a bit a bit sad when I think about it. So should you get one of these? Sure, if it is your dream car, go right ahead. I would definitely say though, make sure you have a daily. Do not use these things as dailies. I did back in those days. Everyone did, because it wasn't thought of as anything, because we had them in abundance. No one was really buying them in bulk or collecting them, so to speak. But yeah, you're going to be spending, as opposed to the $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, max $10,000 for an immaculate model back in the day. You're going to be spending close to 30, 40 grand now, which you could buy a brand new car for that. So just make sure you're budgeting and setting your expectations for these cars, because they're going to need work. They're going to need way more work for way more of the cost for the car, and you don't want to be down and out when your car is not working properly and you need to get to work. You need a daily. You need to be able to, pay the bills, enjoy the car. But yeah, as I said, guys, I got to go to work. So just wanted to give you a little bit of a overview of my S chassis experience and what I think about S chassis. I love those cars. I will forever love those cars. If I could own one again for a reasonable cost, as long as finance is permitting, I definitely would try to get an S15 now, because they're amazing cars just for what they are. So you guys can comment to me what your dreams S chassis is. I'd love to know, because they're I know everybody would like to be drifting on mountains at this time with them, but even if you could just go for a nice spirited drive, why not? Tell me what your S chassis dream car is. So if you guys have any questions or concerns with the podcast or the YouTube channel, and there's anything else you'd like to see, please comment. Please like the video so you can let me know if you like this type of content, or I could switch it up for you. Please follow Real One Garage on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Spotify as well. And until next time, keep it real, keep it relatable. I'll see you later, guys. Peace.